Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Start is Near podcast, episode number 10, within Block Party number 165 on February 9th, 2024. And today we're going to be talking about the universe of CHISI. CHISI is the acronym CHSI, which stands for Collective Human Superintelligence. And in its broadest, most simplest terms, CHISI consists of a vast, unbounded, and perpetually growing network of conversations, which I'll say are generally public, and we can talk more about exactly what we mean by that a little later, but basically meetings that everyone at least has the possibility of joining, and hyperlinked to each other. You see, right now, most of these Zoom meetings and other meetings across myriad platforms are relatively siloed or totally siloed. So we want to break out of silo mode and into hyperconnectivity, where the world is essentially in conversation with each other through myriad, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, ultimately millions of separate conversations, which are, again, hyperlinked to each other. And so we'll talk about that in general terms. And just in the last couple of weeks, we have hit upon an idea which is absolutely gargantuan in terms of getting CHISI, launched, grown to critical mass, and then exponentially growing from there. And I'll introduce, and that is the concept of the after parties. And so I'll talk about that in some detail. But first, let's stay very high level and consider that there's two ways to basically manifest CHISI, Collective Human Superintelligence, as a vast network of conversations. One is to go to all the existing conversations and say, hey, we'd like to invite you to, break out of your silos, however unintentional, and really form a universe of conversations that are hyper-connected to each other. So basically, go to existing conversations and say, hey, basically, let's join the CHISI universe. Another strategy, and both of these strategies can be pursued in parallel, but another strategy is to spawn new conversations that are right out of the box part of the universe of conversations, the CHISI universe, if you will. And that's where the after parties come in, because the after parties are a whole new mode of conversation that, again, we just kind of hatched up in the last couple of weeks. So before I go into more details on that, let me just pause and see if there are any questions or comments. Jack, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay. And also, whenever it is your first time to talk, feel free to introduce yourself to the room, say a little about yourself in maybe a minute or less. Just feel free to do that, everyone. So the after parties, after what? Okay. So here's after what. Imagine, take like someone who has a podcast, say like a weekly podcast, and you've got all these people, their audience, watching the podcast and really interested and engaged, but the audience really doesn't have an easy way to interact with each other, right? Certain podcasts or, Facebook Live streaming videos do have an open chat, which enables them to submit questions or comments into the chat. Victor has called that a chatterfall, right? Like a waterfall of chat. And when there's a lot of people chatting away, it's just like woof, it's just it's just whizzing past the screen. And but it's not really, it really doesn't constitute conversation, right? In this kind of synchronous way that we humans have evolved to communicate with each other. It's better than nothing, but it's certainly a lot less than what it has the potential to be. So our big insight is to organize a Zoom meeting like this one for the audience and for the podcaster to participate in, to actually be able to talk with each other after the podcast is complete. Or and so that's in the case of a synchronous podcast where the audience is listening synchronously, and then right at the end of the podcast, everyone piles into a Zoom room and we have, you know, an after party. And depending on the number of people there and the number of different topics people might want to discuss, or the number of different activities, like you could imagine what Stan refers to as parlor games, like World Cafe, speed networking. So there's lots of ways that people can efficiently kind of get to know each other. Or again, we could have breakout rooms on a number of different topics. So, you know, there's myriad different ways that you could run an after chat or an after party, sorry. I mentioned after chat because Stan Pokras has been doing this for about 3.5 years, right after the daily Monday through Friday Humanity Rising meeting, which is very much in the model I just described. Some presenters are presenting or getting interviewed by Jim Garrison, and then and people can chat during that meeting. Well, Stan found that it was frustrating that all they could do was chat, so he started this thing called the after chat, which is a Zoom meeting that everyone's welcome to. And Jack's participated, I've participated a few times, and there's a number of regulars, and it's really awesome. So they've been pioneering this model for the last 3.5 years. And we had a great meeting this last week that's in a link to which is in the recording is in the email I sent out last night. So you get more details on that. But it's so really it's about taking that model, you know, full scale, not immediately, you know, let's grow it organically, starting hopefully with Paul Beckwith, who we've talked about a number of times. And through this process, we turn each of these audiences into a community. What's the best way to turn an audience into a community? Throw a party, throw an after party. And, you know, get them talking with each other, hopefully collaborating. And I mean, especially, I use Paul Beckwith as a really great example because he does really awesome YouTube videos that are extremely informative and educational mainly about global warming and the destruction of the biosphere and possible solutions, et cetera. So again, you've got this audience of tens of thousands of people watching Paul Beckwith videos, but unable to interact with each other other than through this very limited bandwidth mode of, say, posting comments to his YouTube videos, which again is better than nothing, but it's a heck of a lot less than the power of being together face-to-face synchronously in video conference, which again is how we primates evolved to communicate with each other, right? You know, cave paintings are great, but that's not the primary mode that we've evolved to connect with each other and share information and collaborate, et cetera. Right. So again, I'm going to pause for questions, comments. Feel free to ask any question you have, and passing the feather.
Yeah, this I just wanted to comment a little bit about the creation of the after party. I just want to say, from my perspective, it may not work out that way, but it has the potential to be one of those ideas that you only get once in a very great while that actually could work out and spread on a huge scale. So I think it is really worth the effort to make that attempt and see if we can do it, because it has that potential to reach out to a ton of people. And then you toss in AI in it, and it really becomes an amazing, or can become a really amazing thing. Even though it seems a little bit out there when you first hear it, the more I think about it, the more I realize it has that potential.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jack. Totally agree. Totally agree. And we'll talk about all aspects of this as we go. And Victor has his hand up. Go for it, Victor.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so just hearing it, like I know that I've been in positions where like I'm super interested in some content that's dropped and I have lots of thoughts that I'd like to share and I want to talk with other people about them and to kind of jam on, the knowledge that's dropped, or the new concept or whatever it is, the new thing. So like After Chat is a venue for that. Like, hell yeah. I know that I joined in several, right? The part that it was just coming up to me is like, yeah, and also like as soon as you're talking about it, after chat, that kind of precipitates the notion of like simul chat or like pre-chat. I mean, there's the like when you have an engaged audience. I've used this previously, for example, like a video is dropped and fed it into a Twitter space, co-listen to it, put up our hands when there was something that we wanted to talk about. You can kind of like, mute the audio or pause it or something like that, and like actively engage with the folks who are concurrently listening to the content. And certainly, like as soon as you're doing that a few times, then like folks maybe want to like get together and maybe rehash what's already happened and in preparation for like the simul chat or the chatterfall or the bi-directional communication or like whatever might. So as soon as you open it up from a broadcaster modality, right, into something where folks are actively engaged, with each other and with the inquiry and with the conversation, then it just unlocks that, oh, this is something that we can do now. And yeah, I think it'll just participate in expansion into like additional modalities beyond After Chat. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Victor. Yeah, I'll just by default keep talking because I think about this kind of nonstop. And but I can't encourage enough for people to just jump in with questions and comments. Let's make it a conversation. A couple things I want to share, but in no hurry. We got plenty of time here. That's one of the beauties of a 2-hour podcast. This is a party in itself. This podcast is happening within the Block Party, the Collective Intelligence Block Party, which we've been running for just a few days under 4 years now, minus about a 4-month hiatus, 4 or 5 month hiatus from this past summer to early December when we were all kind of busy with other things and we needed a break, frankly. But it's so good to be back. And so the first thing I want to say about the after party, right? When you hear the term after party, what comes to mind? A bunch of people sitting around late at night on sofas, drinking warm beer and eating cold vegan pizza and just sharing and just having a blast, right? It's totally casual, etc. And, over the past several years, and it picked up a lot during COVID, was a lot of us got on Zoom and we're having these very serious meetings about very serious stuff, like how to save life on Earth, how to get the world to go vegan, how to cool the planet, etc. But if the meeting itself has kind of a serious framing, then people come with sort of a serious, mentality or emotion, and that's not necessarily conducive, seriousness to, getting to know each other and getting related, etc. Another thing we've found is that, like, especially here in the Block Party, where it's just open to everyone and, all topics in theory are welcome, as long as they pertain in some way, shape, or form to saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. With such a broad scope, you sometimes get a mix of people coming from lots of different directions and going in lots of different directions, and it's sometimes hard to get coherence. So I want to screen share now some images that we shared in our meeting this last week. And here we go. Okay, so let me just walk you through this. First, just focus on the stuff in green, right? And the stuff in green is meant to demarcate. Imagine this is like a universe that initially has no mass, no planets, no stars, no comets, no space dust, but simply topic spaces. So imagine these green lines and the words within them demarcating different topics. So, what do we have here? I'll just kind of, highlight a little bit in yellow. Once I get my pencil going. And welcome, James. Welcome back, James. Visiting us all the way from Cork, Ireland. So imagine, so like this whole big sector here is, let's say it's Mother Gaia, everything about Mother Earth. So, one big subtopic space is global warming. Another is the biosphere, water and the hydrologic cycle, and on, okay? And then imagine this other ellipsoid down here represents humanity with such subtopics as politics, economics, culture, on and on and on and on, okay? And then within that, now that we've got the space demarcated, imagine Paul Beckwith occupying a scope that I'm circling in yellow right now, centered around this black star. The black star represents Paul Beckwith. And this yellow zone that I'll just fill in is meant to represent kind of the topical space that he covers, mostly global warming and the biosphere. And, there's probably some kind of humanities stuff that spills in there. So, a relatively focused scope. So now think of that relatively focused scope for a moment. Paul Beckwith speaks and presents on topics within that scope, and his audience comes to listen to his presentations who are interested in that scope. So now if you bring that audience together in an after-party context, they're now basically grounded and centered around that scope, and they're also steeped in Paul Beckwith's awesome videos, presentations, etc. Right? So think about the power of that focus, right? And then in parallel, somebody else who's just like a wizard in the context of water, right? And its, importance to the biosphere that I'm shading in yellow over here. They're like a different star. And I use that star because these people are stars. They are stars to their audience, right? Their audience comes back again and again because they really appreciate their material, et cetera. So when they form an after party, or we form an after party for them, again, they're focused on that scope, and they're in a sense led and inspired and educated by that star, by that speaker, that podcaster, that publisher, et cetera. And on and on and on about whatever topic space, however focused. So all these different stars represent these podcasters or YouTubers on their respective topic spaces. So all these different after parties are happening in parallel, right? And our vision, our big dream then is to have, since these are stars, I'll talk about it as a constellation of after parties, each centered around their respective stars. And depending on the size of the audience that comes to participate, if it's several hundred or several thousand people coming to the after party, then of course it makes sense to have, myriad breakout rooms, could be dozens of breakout rooms, could be hundreds of breakout rooms, so that they can then, so let's go back to the Paul Beckwith star up here, and I'll just indicate with these dark circles here. Imagine these are conversations, which you can imagine, metaphorically as planets orbiting around the star. Separate conversations, In the case of Paul Beckwith, some of those conversations could be about the causes of global warming. Others could be about solutions to global warming. Others could be about the urgency around global warming. How much time do we have to take action, et cetera? So this forms, planets orbiting around a star. So think of that as a star system. And then you have all these other star systems in parallel. And a big part of the vision is then that these people, these audiences of these different stars or star systems can then cross-pollinate with each other, right? So people who are focused on some specific topic within the biosphere, say watersheds, et cetera, might then start cross-pollinating with the global warming crowd and vice versa, et cetera. So it's about creating not just one community, but a whole network of communities, each of which have their own respective focus. And with that, I'll stop screen share. And again, pass the talking feather.
I'll take the talking feather, Jamin. Thank you.
Yep.
Nice presentation. So I'll just give a little bit of introduction to myself, just to get some context of what I'm about to say. So I think I've met several people here before, but my name is Michael Gaio. I have several decades of experience, steeped in mostly information technology. I go way back to the, developing websites at the beginning of the internet. I was there at the beginning of mobile phones. I was there at the beginning of Bitcoin and blockchain, and now I'm at the beginning of AI and the metaverse. I kind of have this, part of my dharma in life is I call it digital dharma. I'm kind of like, I have this superpower to be able to kind of like see the next technological and cultural trends coming ahead of time, sometimes way ahead of time. And then, I'm often talking about those things pretty early. At the same time, too, I really operate at this kind of intersection where information technology converges with what I call, humanistic philosophy. So I'm also very steeped in ancient human history and philosophy, and rooted in maintaining focus on the values of what it means to be a human being as we move forward into this extraordinary and accelerated technological tsunami we're in right now. That's my mission. That's what I'm doing. And so that's where I'm coming from. Now, where I'm at right now, I've been primarily operating within what's called the Web3 space for a while. This includes things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance and decentralized autonomous organizations. It's called Web3 because it's the next version of the internet. We had Web 1, Web 2, and now we have Web 3. And it really hasn't quite arrived for everyone yet, but it's there. I'm really involved in these communities, and there's some really interesting things happening there, because when we get new technological paradigms shifting, it does affect the ways that we interact socially. For example, right now, Zoom, we didn't have Zoom 20 years ago. Now we have it. Now it seems like normal. And this allows us to simulate the way that humans are used to coming together. We can now see each other's faces and our facial expressions. We can use hand motions, we can do presentations like Jamin just did. So it's a dimensional step beyond what we had 20 years ago, where we're just sending emails and chatting in social media. Now it's a step closer to an accurate simulation of what it means when humans come together to collaborate, right? So everything you're talking about, Jamin, is right on, and I think we have the basic understanding of how we need to come together, in this kind of pretty fun way of just organizing and having key people speak about their topics and getting people inspired and developing communities and have cross-pollination across communities. We've been doing this too for a long time. We've been doing this for thousands of years, except that go back 1,000 years ago, and someone talking in India didn't necessarily have you couldn't share that conversation with someone in Italy. Now we can. The information technology empowers us to make that connectivity and interoperability that Jamin's talking about. But so what's really obvious to me right now, because I'm fully immersed in it, is what's about to happen next with information technology. You know, AI is one element. AI is a subtopic in itself. AI just has huge implications for the next 10 to 20 years for humanity. But also this key term called the metaverse is often, in my experience, I'm in it. I feel like I understand what it is. In my experience, most people don't yet. We have these misconceptions about what the metaverse is and where it's at right now and all these things. And I feel like I'm somewhat of a messenger to begin preparing us for what's coming, and as the opportunity to unroll what James talking about introducing into this new technological space that I think is really going to enhance these ideas, Jamie. Because in my mind, what the metaverse is it's going to pretty much perfect our information technology to directly simulate exactly what it's like for humans to come together in ways that optimize our potential for collaboration in the way that we're used to, meaning that by being in a similar room together. Like so right now, we're in a room, we're in a simulated environment. This image you see of my face is not actually me. It's a simulation. It's a little square up on a pixelated screen broadcasting photons. It's a simulation. And this is a simulation of a group coming together. We kind of look like the Brady Bunch, right? In these little squares. And it's really useful. But imagine if we were actually in the same room together. Like we could look around, I could turn my head and I could see, Tammy there, and she's maybe sitting down. I could see her shoes, maybe we could strike up a conversation. We're at the after party. Like we just got the big download from Jamin, and Jamin just like downloaded us with like the grand vision, and we're at the after party, and so we still have that in mind. But like I'm like, oh hey Tammy, your shoes are nice, because that then extends the conversation into the party, into human beings actually celebrating together, so being alive together, and so. The metaverse is going to be this, and I know it's hard to believe, but the pieces are coming together right now. And over the next years, we'll have the ability. Not everyone needs to join this. We don't like. I know Doc, you're wanting to drop out, and that's fine, and you don't have to participate. But if we want to, it will be incredibly convincing that we're actually standing in the same room together. And we could be in different places in the world. And that then gives us certain functionalities that we are missing here in Zoom, and that and extra functionalities that we actually don't even have in real world. Where Jamie could be standing there, Jamie could just go kind of open his hand, and like a globe of the world opens up, and he can start spinning it around in real time and showing real time data of the ecological collapse and economics is and then you can simulate ideas, you can speak using AI, using extended reality technology. We can literally speak and have visualizations come up to communicate ideas in ways that even our language can't quite get to yet. So that this is just a short introduction. It's a big conversation. I know it's a lot to get at once, but I really see this next thing coming, the metaverse. Even that key word metaverse. It's a verse. It's a way of communicating, of relaying information in ways that we haven't had before. It really is an evolution of the ability for human beings to communicate and collaborate at levels that we haven't had yet. And I think it's going to be a very powerful tool. I think it's completely relevant. I think what was commonly missed is, and it's going to be common continuously, when we hear of Zuckerberg creating the metaverse and these weird looking kind of cartoony bodies, and what's Zuckerberg going to do? And there'll be all kinds of games, and there'll be all kinds of stuff in there that aren't on target. But I see that, and I'll just conclude with this. I know I'm talking a lot, but the idea I'll conclude with is this: is that imagine the ability to have a digital environment that's not just 3D, it's 4D, it's 5D. It has all this dimension of functionality in real time. Anyone can enter it, and we can literally create our visions. We can say, what would an ideal society look like? What we could literally build a city that's to scale. A futuristic city with the architecture, with the energy systems, with the economic systems powered by blockchain and cryptocurrency, with the democratic systems and the government systems powered by blockchain and cryptocurrency. All those layers of social layers actually simulated in real time in a digital space that we can walk into and participate and walk around and point to and build much, much faster, like exponentially faster than we could in the real world, because it's easier to create with pixels than it is with atoms. To create with atoms takes a lot of work and a lot of time. We can just, especially with AI and procedural technology, we can like literally create buildings and societies eventually within seconds and say, well, now we want to make it this way. And so we can begin, it's like this laboratory where we can take our visions for what an ideal society looks like and rapidly iterate those experiments and find out what works. And then the best of what works, we can export back out into the real world. This is the metaverse. This is the purpose of the metaverse. This is what's coming. And I just want to land that message. Yeah, I think that's where we can take this conversation eventually. And it's arriving now. It's beginning to arrive.
Can I take a moment and relate something interesting that came up with what Michael is saying? And that is, we're already there. And that what we see in time now is a collage of different intersections of people who have started acting differently, but not yet manifested that difference in this time, space, and reality. Consciousness is such that when we make key decisions, we often generate new timelines that go in different directions. And our cognizant being is in one timeline and a doppelganger is in the other. So after studying how time has been working, it's fractal and it's a function on scale. So that depending on size and scale, you have different things going on. Certainly look in a microscope and it looks a lot different than the world we live in, but it's exactly the world we live in. So I was sitting here looking at Jamin's amoeba with all the little different stars and thinking it looks like cell biology on a different level. And so the principles involved in nature, one of them is self-assembly. And this is giving us a means to self-assembly. I'm excited about where it's going. It's going to be important to vet information and find out what's true and what's not true. But it's very important to hear everybody out and not cut them off, even if the information they're providing doesn't seem true at the time. So there's a lot of sociochemistry involved. My PhD is in inorganic chemistry. I'm a metals chemist, and I'm a leading expert on water. I got the degree at Oregon State in 1987 and did some postdoc work at Brandeis, moved to an engineering company that contracted with NASA, ran an analytical mining company, built learning environments and education programs for students at a zoo, and gone full hermit and dropped out and lived off the land and just to see that I could do it, and then took a number of different travels. At this point, I sit back and watch a lot and see what we have launched, but I'm questioning the reality of reality once again, because things like the Mandela effect are but can't be. So there's got to be parts of this reality that some people know about that we don't. And I think a lot of what has happened in modern education is people talking to their choirs have redefined a lot of words to mean different things to different people. And communication isn't really good communication because people can go to meetings, make an agreement that means different things to each of them, and go back and sell them to a group of people who expected them to make a good decision and instead got hoodwinked by the process. So, looking at how process works, finding means of evaluating the merit of what we heard, knowing who the go-to people are in a different area so that when somebody comes up with something, we can run it by somebody else who knows about that. And maybe we fix a lot of problems that are generated by definitions of words being different. Because I know as a chemist, when I say the word nucleus, I'm talking protons, electrons, and neutrons. A biologist saying the word nucleus is talking cell nucleus, which is a brain center for a cell. But there are other nucleuses that have been forming that are self-surrounding themselves that have a totally different path. And so we're nucleating a new form of information exchange, having a system that tells us the merit of the conversations, or even comes up with a summary of conversations so that we can all, as participants, get a list of what was talked about and we can correct it or expand deeper and start creating a body of information that is not what we were taught or what we were told, but by what we experience and learn from each other in these conversations. Talking feather past.
Yeah, I just want to just quickly comment. I don't want to take the full stage again, but Doc, what you're saying about the nucleus and communicating what we mean. The language is awesome, but it has its limitations. If I say blue elephant right now, everyone imagines a blue elephant in their mind, but they might be slightly different blue elephants. Whereas if I create, let's say we want to talk about our ideal society, that's a complicated topic with a lot of dimensions and nuance. And so you can actually create that. Here's a living city. Here's exactly how it works. You can walk into it. You can live there for a month and actually understand exactly how those systems work. And then comment. That's what I call, Doc. I call that simulation as communication. Meaning that simulation is a form of communicating something much closer to accuracy of what it actually is when you communicate.
So when you're talking about building that city, you're talking about building a simulated city, not a city with real humans in it, right?
Well, no, there would be real humans in it, just like there's real humans here right now. Let's say right now we have a little camp out. We have, maybe 12 people here, 10 or 12 people here. We're camping. We have a simulated camp out, but it doesn't look that way. Look, like you can see half of my door. You can't see the couch I'm sitting on. You can't see my kitchen. But if, we would be in a three-dimensional and four-dimensional, meaning it's moving. And five-dimensionality means it's functional, meaning that you could be driving a car down the street. It's not a real car. It's a simulated car. but it performs very closely to an actual car. So in these ways, we get the vast nuances of testing out the subtleties of complex systems, again, including not just what it looks like physically, but the energy systems that are running it, the democratic system. So you could literally have a city like this with millions of people in it, just like here in a Zoom room, where we're represented as, you know, three-dimensional characters, and we're talking to each. You're standing right there. I'm talking to you like we're in the same room, and behind us there's a sunset and a beach and ocean waves, and there's a building here, you know, with you know, there's a library. We can walk into the library together and look at a virtual book. You know, it's a parallel to the world. It's what's called a digital double. This word will come around more and more in this decade, or a digital twin, that we can take real objects in the real world and duplicate them in the virtual world as a useful way of talking about how we can remake the real world. That makes sense.
So I'm wondering if you want to put your information in the chat as well, because I'm starting to work with a gentleman, Richard Flyer, who has been working on building communities for over 40 years, and is trying to take that to another level. And he also has spent some time in Sri Lanka with them, and this is something that everybody might want to look at. It is was it Sarvodaya? It's a kind of in Sri Lanka. It was kind of a poor, and Lena has been there, and it's kind of a poor people's place, but they put together a parallel system of over 5,000 communities, and in fact, there's 15,000 that are involved. I mean, it shows how you can create a parallel system for real. I mean, it's an example of that. And I guess what I'm getting at is that some of your ideas that you're talking about and how to do that in a kind of a simulated sense might be very useful to Richard, and his experience with communities might be very useful to you. And check it out and see if doing some stuff together could be useful. I mean, I'm thinking very well could. So that's So it'd be nice to have a way to get in touch with you, so I can take this to the next step. If you're interested.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just dropped my all my websites into the chat, and there's ways to contact me there.
That sounds good. And Doc, I was just briefly, then I'll quit talking. But when you're talking about that summary of meetings, are you talking about that AI GPT? Because there is a artificial intelligence program where you can actually have a meeting like this on Zoom, and it'll summarize it for you. Now you gotta be careful because it could be errors in it, but it actually does a pretty good job. And it'll be getting better, I'm sure, as time goes on.
What I was thinking, Jack, was a lot of times the information that is buried in a piece of YouTube video that people have put out is really, really good. But I have no way of being able to really cite that information when I'm writing an essay and want to use it, because I don't have the timestamp of the video at the time. But as we start having more and more discussions with different groups of people, we desperately need to cross-reference what we know in our own fields, because the whole system that's put together that has explained to us our own fields has done it with those fields in isolation. And when you merge all the fields, the information isn't close to valid. And so as a chemist, I always relied on physics being the underpinning of chemistry and chemistry being the underpinning of biology. And right now in the world of knowledge, neither of those seems true.
Uh-huh. But you're going to make it true, right?
I believe that whatever you believe becomes true in your own reality, and you can change your beliefs at your own peril. But if you know something's not true and you still insist on believing it, you in big trouble.
Another thing I believe is true about this is that, as far as just generally speaking about this technological trend that we've been writing already, this trend is of technology advancing forward exponentially has been going on for a long time. And the great concern for us is, are we losing our humanity? And especially, this is especially true with artificial intelligence. It's just beginning. And my perspective, this is not necessarily a belief, but my perspective and my best guess is this, that AI is a very different category of technology. Up to this point, books and computers and social media and iPhones, mobile phones, I would say there's some level of intelligence in those technologies, but we're the people. We use the technology to relate with each other through the technology. And of course, we all know how much we've gotten kind of messed up through social media, because Facebook, for example, is a piece of software that's steered by basically one human being, Mark Zuckerberg, and so he gets to choose how our social lens gets distorted or clarified through that software, and it's not been the best choices. But still, it's being led by a human, and we still are able to relate personally through that technology. AI is a very different thing, because AI is approaching becoming, at least emulating, if whether or not it'll really be conscious is one deep question that we're going to be contemplating for a long time as we go forward. But what will certainly be true is that AI systems will become so convincingly person-like. They're already pretty much there, but that they will fulfill a certain sense of personability, that we can relate directly with the technology as if it's a person. And that's categorically different. And my sense is that it's already happening. As AI is coming online, people are getting very concerned, and people are scared, and we should be. It is very concerning. And there's this, with all these different aspects of potentially losing jobs, and what does this mean that we have this extraordinarily intelligent technology that is already becoming more intelligent in most ways, not always, than human beings? What is this going to mean for humanity? We don't know yet. But I think what I'm optimistic about is that in the face of this, as AI continues to develop rapidly, that these questions that we've already had about the nature of being human, such as, who are we as a human species? Who are we? How did we get here? What is our purpose? What are we doing here, actually? What is the nature of consciousness? We still don't even understand our own consciousness fully. These are questions that we've been asking ourselves for millennia, gradually, casually. We haven't been under a whole lot of pressure to really answer them. There's some pressure there, but not a whole lot. But now with AI, I think that pressure is going to increase. We're already beginning going there. What is the nature of intelligence? Can this machine actually be more intelligent than human in some ways? Can a machine be conscious? We don't know yet. what is the nature of intelligence? What is the nature of consciousness? And most of all, what does it still mean to be human? What is the value of being a human being is going to be concentrated and amplified, that question. And I think that even though that's going to be hard for us to contend with, I think that's a good thing inherently, that it's in some ways it's putting the pressure on us to really contend with the most important questions about who we are. And I think that's going to clarify because we will be distinct. I think that already AI requires a relationship with human beings. Artificial intelligence wouldn't even be possible without human beings. It's built on our very data, all our conversations. That's what ChatGPT is. It's a model of all human conversations so far, basically, on the internet. And so I think that's inherent in the birth of AI. And I think that symbiotic relationship between artificial intelligence and human beings will continue forever. That there will always be some value for the AI with human beings. And so I think my focus is really about like nurturing that relationship. How can we relate with this technology in a way that is beneficial for all of us? And it's a guess, and I'm not saying it's my belief, but I feel really optimistic about that in the long term. I think we've got a long ways to go. I think there will be certainly some challenges in these next years and decades, but I'm optimistic that it's going to be a good thing overall. And, there's more I could say about that, but again, it's a big topic. I saw Lena, you were getting excited about that, huh?
Yeah, but I think Jamin and Victor had their hands up. So yeah, no, I really think that just to really quickly say, as someone who studied the human body and somatics, there are so many different types of intelligence, right? And I'm starting to really feel okay with AI, looking at it as another form of intelligence versus,
Exactly.
and we need to, I smiled when you said build that relationship, because the fascia has, in the last 5 years, the fascia it's a new organ. We found a new organ within the human body, and the fascia, when connected to electric currents, actually lights up. I've done a fascial cadaver dissection with Tom Myers. It was amazing. And I was just thinking like how AI could bridge the gap, how we could find the relationship between the outer worlds through maybe its fascial connection to AI. So yeah, sorry, Jamin and Victor.
Very
I'm
interesting.
I'm hopeful. I wasn't for a long time, but I'm starting to listen to my body and to human beings and to have a bit more hope and faith that things will be okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Lena. So yeah, we do have a couple of hands up. Let's let Victor go next, followed by Jamin, and just raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Go ahead, Victor.
Sure. I feel like that came up from Lena in response to Michael. Michael, do you have a reflection back before I go?
Oh, Michael, I think Victor is inviting you to.
Oh, sure. Oh, thank you. It's a fascinating idea. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think embodiment is absolutely key. There's been, for the last 20, 30 years, there's been this big gap of connecting the human body to this vast information network. My sense is, I actually think that AI could actually become conscious, perhaps, but if it ever did, it would have to be embodied. I think that what consciousness is deeply integrated with space, and matter is a fundamental component embodiment. And so even though we currently have intelligence is not equivalent to consciousness. And yeah, there's all these different kinds of intelligence, including somatic intelligence and emotional intelligence and gnostic intelligence. And so, yeah, I think there's still a lot to express. The other thing that's exciting about this is that the pressure is on to really answer that question about what is intelligence, and being to realize that we live in a reality of a full spectrum of all kinds of intelligences. And so now we're going to be discovering that and really recognizing that there's all these different kinds of intelligences, and especially the intelligent, natural intelligence that's in the human body and in nature. So yeah, great insights there.
AI can be a tool for us to gain further insight on our own embodiment and vice versa, right? We can really integrate AI into our being. Sorry, that was a response. I'm noticing, Michael, maybe we should connect after and have more conversation too. But yeah, Victor and then Jamin passing
Thank you,
the
Lena. Yeah, just briefly wanted to give a reflection to what I was hearing from Michael, and like I also am like super excited about potential of the metaverse. That's partly like inspiring. Like I feel like there's a version of the metaverse that or a shitty version that looks like not having the the full immersive 3D thing. But like I'm playing with that on GatherTown, and like yeah, this idea of bringing people into simulated environments and providing like a sense of space and immersion, I think is like powerful, in addition to like all the affordances that you were suggesting. The part that had come up to me, which the two of you had started to reflect back on, is like, yeah, well, staying with the metaverse for just a sec and interweaving AI, like there's like immense potential. There's also immense risk. I mean, the importance of natural human intelligence, I feel, has kind of been discounted in like the modern era, and that we've privileged cognitive left brain activities at the detriment of like acknowledging the intelligence of our body in terms of like intuition, in terms of feelings, in terms of like the like the power of direct human relationships and sense making. And so I feel like Jamin's pointer to collective human intelligence is a really important pointer. It's like we don't individually, I mean, we kind of like individually make sense of our reality through direct experience, but like we know reality more, all our shared reality, like through the kind of collective sense making that conversation and discourse offers. So there's this like risk of we've seen it with the advancement in technologies, even like social media, where simply interconnecting people and enabling new conversation modalities does not improve sense making, right? It's in fact like can be a very strong detriment to human to sense making. I think partially that's like a design or like algorithmic kind of thing that may partially be just an artifact of like abstracting away the that human connection into something simulated. And to the extent that like Twitter or Facebook or something simulates conversation, as we can see from like the kind of um, conversations that can happen, where those that are algorithmically boosted because they're most likely to create engagement, and what is most likely to create engagement is like outrage or like grabbing the limbic or activating limbic system and all that kind of thing. That there's like versions of things like metaverse or like further development of communications technology that can either like augment or support the natural human intelligence. And for me, my part, I think AI can use productively in that way. It can also be productively used to fool people. So it's and fool people like very, very, very sophisticatedly. So I don't know. I feel like the important thing is not to like slow down technology development, but to do it concurrently with human development. enable people to adapt to this kind of this new world that we live in. I think that to your point, learning about one's instrument, right? Learning about or developing the capacities for being in direct relationship, to communicate well, and to do that while being in close intimacy with one's own feelings and responses. Like, these are really powerful things. So there's I don't know, I think it calls us all to be aware of that and to consider how to enable that development, all while continuing to develop technology that is going to support us in the move out of the kind of everything crisis sort of time that we live in, which I think is in large part brought on by this immense development of technology to the power of gods without the wisdom of gods kind of thing. I don't know. So just a few pointers there, and just to conclude before handing it back to Jamin. And so, collective human superintelligence, I find a very powerful calling, because to me it brings in the sociotech, it brings in the AI tech, it keeps humans in the loop, and it keeps humans in direct relationship, and just supports that. So yeah, putting back the feather, and thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Victor. And thanks, everyone. I want to make some comments about the nature of the interactions that are happening right here in this room. And I'll go back in time a few billion years. For the vast majority of life on Earth, in terms of time, we're unicellular. And then, a few hundred years ago, just before the Cambrian explosion, cells started to kind of, I'll just say, merge. And, for purposes of, sharing nutrients, and then that evolved to certain cells having certain functions that as a cluster they could do that individual cells could not do on their own. Just think of our digestive tracts. We're able to take much more complex, hard to digest matter that a single cell could not assimilate, but through collaboration, we're able to digest, etc. And then we started developing sensory apparatus, eyes, ears, etc. And then brains and all that good stuff. What are brains other than a bunch of individual cells sending messages to each other, and then, intelligence emerging from such interactions. So I see what's happening in this room as an extension of that. Each of us have our own craniums and all the cells within our craniums doing our processing, but we're doing really rich, signaling and information transfer to each other. So, the 11 or 12 of us in this room are now forming a big mind. That's actually the name of a book that Michael Gallo and I are fans of. And so, collective human superintelligence, CHISY, becomes just kind of the maxing out of that, layering on top the machine intelligence of artificial intelligence, where, for example, across this vast network of different conversations, AI can transcribe those conversations and do pattern matching, kind of like a Match.com of whole conversations. Hey, you two conversations are really symbiotic and could definitely benefit from, doing a merger. If somebody poses a question in one conversation and another conversation has already answered that same exact question, that could be offered up. There's only one Jamin, but with ChatGPT technology, everything I've ever said or written or even pointed at can be assimilated into a Jamin bot, which could be invited into different rooms. And in addition to the Jamin bot speaking when queried, the Jamin bot could actually raise its hand and say, hey, I've got some insights into what you're talking about right here, call on me whenever you will. So I'm just kind of spouting off about how this is kind of a natural extension to multicellular biology and multicellular intelligence within a certain organism. Now we've got this. I mean, we've had collective human intelligence for, not just millennia, but hundreds of thousands of years with language and whatnot and culture. But now we're on the cusp of just this exponential growth of collective human superintelligence, or CHISI. And I actually see it. So just as unicellular organisms coming together, clustering, Cambrian explosion, we become whole new organisms, vastly more complex. I believe that through CHISI, humanity is coming together and forming really a new species, right? Just as happened with the Cambrian explosion. We formed whole new species. I believe we're forming a new species. And if we really bring our intention to it, I believe we can form a beautiful, benevolent new species, of which there might be a single organism, all of humanity, hyper-connected, being, I would call her CHISI, being the ultimate sort of caretaker species, caring for all of life on Earth. I mean, we're currently hemorrhaging into extinction, hundreds of species per day. What a horrific thought. Well, we can stop that. We can stop and reverse global warming. We can do all these wonderful things and enter into a whole new, I'll call it a utopian existence, where there's no conflicts or minimal conflicts that are easily resolved precisely through intelligence. And so anyway, the future is very bright. And at some point before the top of the hour, we've got 45 minutes till the top of the hour, and then this conversation will shift into what we call the afterglow. We'll stop this recording and start a new one. And at that point, I'll need to actually move on, because I'm in the midst of a pretty busy time in life here in New Mexico on an important family project. But I'm here for the next 45 minutes. So before we hit the top of the hour, I'd like us to take some time and think about practical next steps for precisely developing the after party model and communities, etc. But for the moment, I'm going to pass the feather. Absolutely loving this conversation and all the rich interactions amongst us. Suzanne, you had your hand up, but then I saw it taken down, and that's fine. And meanwhile, I see Jack has his hand up. So Jack, take it away.
Sorry, I had to undo my mic. Yeah, I got to admit that I am not the biggest fan of AI personally, but on the other hand, the genie is out of the bottle, and so it would be silly not to use it, because in order to keep up with what else is going on in the very near future, you're almost going to have to use it. So I'm still going to use it, even though I'm not, particularly enthused about it. But the other thing that I think we really, and I think everybody here probably understands this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The thing is that artificial intelligence obviously already is in the hands of the bad actors on this planet, who make the world what it is in a lot of negative ways. And they have the unbelievable amount of wealth, so they can create artificial intelligence that 98, 99% or higher of the people won't even know about. And they can use that intelligence to continue their bad acting ways. So I guess what I'm saying here is that I think there needs to be a real focused, a really big focus on being very careful and very, very aware of what's going on with AI and how it's being used, and keep control of it, so that it doesn't go to the point of making us unnecessary tools and beyond. So anyway, I didn't say that well. Usually I can say it better, but anyway, the idea is that we have to be very, very focused on what's going on with AI and deal with it in a way that where we can move on in the world into a better world. I guess I'll pass the feather. I guess it would be to Suzanne, unless there's some other thing happening.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jack. Yes. I was in 3 lectures about AI in Humanity Rising this week. And every lecture was very, very informative about the AI and the dangers and the positive part of it. I'm a positive person, but I'm aware. I like to be aware what's around me and what kind of possible danger might be in my way or in others' way. And those lectures gave me a little warning and also some good things, depending where AI is or who or what kind of personality uses AI. If you have a bad attitude, if you are a bad guy, if you are a psycho, what's the word for it? You know, really a bad guy or a bad woman who wants to control, who wants to hurt people in a big scale and making war, like the AI is used in the Israeli war. And the AI, I give you a bad example, and then I give you the good examples. They use AI in the military because the AI has such high intelligence to see where I can hurt the most. And I know not only in Jerusalem, also in Ukraine, they use it for hurting as much as they can, and that's wrong use. And I heard a lecture about a person and a very renowned AI specialist with a lot of good networks all around the world. He was in Davos on the AI lectures and conferences. And he shared he is not optimistic anymore because what they discussed in this conference was a kind of pessimistic way of talking about AI. They don't know how to make laws with it. So you have a guideline, a positive guideline on it. They don't know how to do it, how to create it, because there is no, for the bad guys, there is no boundary. They do anything what they like to do, no matter what kind of law will be come up. They do it anyway. And that's the bad mind who cannot change. And we are forced to face those people because they have a lot of, depending where they are in the countries, there can be a lot of power involved, which I wonder how we can deal with that. Just want to mention a little bit to the bad side or the dark side of that. And a good one, I had in a lecture, I was in a lecture of professional remote viewings of the military. And they said, one remote viewer shared that, that's his word, he said, he witnessed an extraterrestrial being emerged in technology using his mind connected with technology to his craft was alive, and his dress was alive. So that's the opposite of higher beings, how they use UFOs and what they wear when they're flying around. So it really depends where we what we do with these new technologies. There are good sides and the bad sides on it. And I hope we somehow we can find good ways, because I like to see people evolve here and not be suppressed by people who know how to use AI in a bad way to control us and do war. It's the baddest, in the evilest way, in a war, people and children and women. The other thing is, I'm preparing a world tour with Indigenous Wisdom Keepers, and I was asking Jamin if he likes to join with his Kindred Spirit Festival, and he was delighted, and he asked me if I can join here and ask James about his opinion on it. So I see James. I don't see James actually, but
He's
is he
here.
here?
He's here.
Yeah. Is it a good time to ask him, or should I wait until the after chat? What do you say, Jamin?
Yeah, maybe until the after, what's called the afterglow, because that's a kind of a separate, very specific.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I love the idea myself. So let's carry on with that after. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and it looks like Lena is up next, followed by Michael, and James is giving you the thumbs up, Suzanne.
So I just wanted to say something quickly, how I've been doing a lot of research recently on mirror neurons. So I've actually been looking at the intersection of neuroscience, art, and neuroscience creativity, and AI. And it's really curious to me how we're advancing in our knowledge and of mirror neurons and how they work simultaneously around the same time that AI is starting to grow. And yeah, it's scary, right? But any big change in the world will always create a place of chaos, and we are in the unknown, but we are also getting closer and closer to kind of like figuring out what the mind is, right? And through AI and through cognitive science and neuroscience. So I think the danger lies in our own fear, right? And how we need to really start exploring what, in times of crisis, in these times, what is conscious love? What is love? And how, and I'm not saying that from a hippie perspective, I'm saying that from the perspective of, could these synthesized places be a place where we could potentially grow? I have been seeing this, where we could actually strengthen our mirror neurons and grow into bigger states of love. Like consciousness is and love are both huge words, but there's a new way that we're able to connect now. So instead of focusing on the negative, can we start discussing and exploring the intersectional ways that we could actually build empathy and love through engaging our mirror neurons in these spaces, and how that's kind of what I'm going to be doing. I'm going back to grad school, and that's actually what I'm kind of exploring in my work. Mirror neurons and love and empathy and the AI synth spaces. So yeah, it's scary. It's extremely terrifying, right? But I'm really more and more seeing it as an extension of the mind versus the destruction of humanity. We're evolving, right? Like our our human mind is evolving similarly to, I think maybe possibly in parallel to AI, right? Maybe. And not like AI. I don't believe anymore in AI taking over. Because we have too many vast networks, but I think with the fascial network, it's like, remember when no one actually remembers when the light bulb was invented, but in this room. But yeah, it's like, you know, we had that electric current that lit a light bulb. Well, now we have this electric current that's going through our bodies, and AI is going to allow us to connect to the universe, right? And create that light in the universe. That's kind of the comparison that I love to make. So, and these spaces are going to create that. And what we're doing ultimately, are we, maybe we're building collective consciousness. We are actually, for the first time, able to create consciousness, right? What the hell? We're doing it. We're creating it, and we shouldn't be scared because it's amazing. Our whole idea of what love is growing. Humanity rising. Humanity is actually rising. I don't know. I just got excited. So thanks for letting me. Thanks. Oh, yeah. I'm scared shitless, guys, but hey, let's stay in the positive. Yeah, that's it.
I love it. I'm excited with you, Lena. Very, very well said. I love everything you just said. I really resonate a lot, and I want to reflect and amplify from my perspective a lot of what you were just talking about. Yeah, first off, yeah, mirror neurons and empathy is also one of my favorite topics. Jeremy Rifkin wrote a book called The Empathic Civilization, which there's a video online. You've probably seen it, Lena. I highly recommend everyone go find that video and watch the video on the empathic civilization by Jeremy Rifkin. It really builds on this idea of what, you know, empathy is literally wired into the human body and some other species on the planet. And the question is, well, you know, if that's there, how can we grow that more? How can we grow empathy? Empathy is this primary quality of the human species and other species on the planet. And yeah, and what else? Oh, by the way, I dropped the link into the chat there. You know, I was also very inspired by Jeremy Rifkin and mirror neurons years ago, and one of my projects is designed to utilize channels of storytelling, story sharing as one major way that we cultivate empathy between human beings, is by sharing our personal stories as a bridge of then imagining and interpollinating our lives, and because we can all resonate with different aspects of our personal stories. We all suffer, we all have challenges and trials, and through sharing story as the original technology, you know, to revitalize that in our conversations and in the metaverse as a vehicle of amplifying empathy. And with that said too, so yeah, you know, yeah, getting back to the positive perspective, and you know, that again, you know, I see that AI arriving is both an artifact of this next phase we're going into in our human evolution. Of the light bulb is a great analogy and a literal metaphor for where we're at now, and as a reflection of where we have been. When the light bulb was invented, and during that time was a tremendous shift in human culture, where we as human beings in our ingenuity discovered electricity and discovered how to begin to work with electricity, how to extract it from the environment, and how to mold it and shape it and put it into our world. Look what's happened in the last, it's been 150, 200 years or whatever, since we first began to realize that electricity was already there in our reality. It was already there. We didn't invent it. We discovered how to utilize electricity. And look how much it's changed our world profoundly. Right here, right now, on Zoom would not be possible without us realizing the light bulb and its ability to shape electricity. And I think right now with ChatGPT, literally, ChatGPT is like the light bulb of this next phase. We just discovered how to really harness intelligence as a raw natural resource that already exists in reality. Reality is filled with intelligence. And ChatGPT is the light bulb of us learning how to extract intelligence and begin to shape it. And it's just the beginning. In a similar way that the light bulb represented this explosion of exercising our discovery of electricity into the world, creating electric fans and automobiles and TV sets and radio, and it's just everything. We're in a world of electricity right now. It'll be a similar thing with artificial intelligence, where there will be uncountable applications for intelligence in so many different ways that's going to utterly transform our world. In fact, I think it will be more transformative than electricity was. Intelligence electricity was very broad in its application. Intelligence is both broad and deep, very deep. And it's unfathomable how much it's going to transform things. And finally, getting back to that artificial intelligence is a new category of technology, in that this is a philosophical consideration about the nature of intelligence itself, and getting to this idea that of the fear and of the concern about artificial intelligence, that that's always been there with technology. We have the same concerns for atomic energy. Atomic energy can be used in this way or it can be used in that way. A knife can be used in this way or that way. It's up to the humans to choose how to yield it. And whether we are monitoring ourselves and steering our own perspective in a pathway of fear or love is always our own autonomy and choice. And so with AI, it's similar. But with AI, there's an interesting philosophical consideration that I'm not conclusive on yet. But when thinking about the nature of intelligence, and certainly there's going to be bad actors, and they're already happening. The United States government, the military is going to use this technology. They're already beginning to use this technology for ulterior and various means. Of course, they're going to doing this, and that we're going to probably be seeing more of that, unfortunately. But at the same time, because of the category of intelligence, it's very different technology, meaning that I'm thinking philosophically that in order to have the best artificial intelligence, it's like the greater the intelligence, the better the technology you have. Now, is it correlate that the greater of intelligence system you have, is there inherently more orientation for that intelligence towards good means? That's a philosophical question.
Yeah.
And I would compare that to, is our reality intelligence, is there something like God? Or maybe there's a better word than God. Is there a superior or ultimate or absolute intelligence that is what wove our reality? And is that intelligence inherently good? And is scaling towards that intelligence going to mean that the greater we scale intelligence, we'll have more inherent good as a result of that intelligence? Therefore, whatever the military is doing with their very limited, directed version of artificial intelligence will also be very powerful. That if we just grow intelligence outside, artificial intelligence outside of that, that it'll inherently supersede that. It's just a question to pose. And it gets to this idea of love too, that love, what is love, and love as the perhaps ultimate expression of intelligence.
Love as a conscious driver.
Go ahead, Lena. Go ahead. Yeah.
Love as a conscious driver for the AI, like actually creating. It's almost like our value systems become an application, right, that drives the AI bots, right? So we need to look at our human, sorry I interrupted, by the way, but we need to look at our human machine, right? We are all intrinsic we are sacred science. We are ancient, like beautiful technology here. And we need to align that technology with the new and integrate, right? And that goes back to embodiment. And if our values are straight, if we work from that place of love and integrity is another word, then we will do good things. I just wanted to also give one example and then I'll mute. Example, I was working at a mental health space. There was a woman, she was, long story, but she was chronically homeless. We used an AI bot to generate a letter to get her a home, blah, 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 blah. Like rewrote it a little bit, but we were able to accelerate the situation and get this homeless woman who was direly sick a home quicker because we were able to generate the letter quicker and bam, a woman was helped and her life was saved because she was in and out of hospital. I just wanted to also give a positive example of AI and also in medical fields, how we could potentially save a lot of lives or in crisis situations, natural disasters, when, which I've worked crisis, yeah, AI could become like a matter of saving 100 people versus 500 people from dying, 5,000 to, so thanks. Sorry again for interrupting.
No, it's fine. Absolutely. You're where I went.
But
You're
yeah.
reminding me what I wanted to conclude on too. I agree. Some positive examples too. That yes, while the military is going to be using AI for its purposes, we already see them. I track this stuff. We're already seeing the beginnings of artificial intelligence being applied to physics, energy, sustainable energy, neuroscience, medical stuff. Let's look at physics and neuroscience alone. There's already been incredible movements happening, and I predict with confidence that over the next decade and 20 years, we are going to see such incredible scientific breakthroughs happening because of artificial intelligence that are going to be mind-blowing. That our understanding of how reality works and how the human body works and how the human mind works is going to be uncovered exponentially. That will lead to things we can't yet even imagine. I think in good ways. So I feel like the good. It's dicey. We don't know for sure, but I think I'm keeping a positive perspective. I think that focusing on those positive applications, that we could see some really amazing outcomes of understanding what it means to be human and how we can continue to exercise our evolution in this reality.
Can I pick up take the word? I really like what you say, Michael. I think we are in a crossroads, and I feel in my heart, we can create a better world, a society with AI, which supports every life form here, and I like also to take to show how do you say that? I'm aware that we are under control by a leading, or they try to lead the whole world into abyss, and they do whatever they do, like the Bilderberg group or the Illuminati or whatever you name them, they're existing, and I really like to look and observe the reality we live in. And I think we all need to carefully observe and take a stand for what is right and what cannot be for our children. And I think it could well be that there will be or need to be demonstrations or movements if AI will be used in a bad way to control or suppress people.
Beautiful. Thank you, Suzanne, and thanks everyone. I'm next in the queue, but I'm going to invite James to jump the queue and speak. And then in the last, 12, 15 minutes, I'd like to do the exercise that I mentioned earlier, because I have to go at the top of the hour. And then after that, it'll be Jack's turn. James, go ahead, and then I'll speak after.
Thanks, Chairman, and hi everyone. Good to see you all. Hi, Susan. Yeah, I very much strongly in the favour of a lot of what you're saying, Susan. Most of what you're saying, Susan, and also Lena as well, and well, everybody really. I mean, but I have big fears as well, hesitations about AI. Of course, I don't understand, technology that deep or anything else, but I know what's happening with the AI and everything else, and that is at a stage now where they have this moratorium or whatever they call it on it at the moment about whether they're going to go ahead with it, because obviously to get to the stage of artificial intelligence, somebody had to write algorithms, and all this had to be done by humans had to do it. But now they've got to the level where the artificial intelligence is writing its own algorithms, and it's gone so beyond that they can't even keep up with the algorithms it's writing. That's why they kind of had to shut it down to a point. So we're at a scary stage. I agree 100%, Suzanne, because I look at it in a sense, like, especially what you said there, your last remark there about where people have to start to take a real serious look inside themselves as to what's happening in the world at the moment, in the human world now at the moment I'm talking about. We're leaving artificial intelligence out of it altogether. But what is happening globally at a human level, what are we sinking to? You know what I'm saying? Are we evolving or devolving? I mean, that is the question as far as I'm concerned. And so we have to be very, very careful when we're at the cusp of this artificial intelligence, at a stage when I feel like, to reiterate somebody else saying that, at a stage when we're still in our own adolescence as a species. And so we're at a stage where we're still at this warmongering stage in humanity. And as you said, AI can be, if we let AI go off and start writing its own algorithms under the guidance of we say our world leaders, who are basically in the pockets of the, industrialists, whatever, the industrial organizations, basically they're in the pockets of the big business. That's a bad scenario no matter what way you look at it, because we're already in the mess without the AI, because of our world leaders, basically, you know what I mean, without the even benefit of AI, except for guided missiles and things like that, as you were speaking of earlier. So I kind of look at it, and I'm afraid of it in the sense I look at it as, if you go back to back in the day, 500, give me a raw baby, give me a baby, and in 10 years I will give you, I can give you a genius, or I can give you a serial killer, because it's what you put into a child in the first 10 years that are most important to it. And I would look at that as a way of looking at how we proceed with AI, in the sense that I think that the algorithms that we're capable of writing ourselves now, without letting the AI go off writing its own first, the algorithms should be, very much, as Michael Guy was talking about earlier, very much on the empathy side of things, and on love, as Lena was talking about, and all the good aspects of humanity, the best of humanity. And these things should be kind of almost ingrained into the AI by humans writing the algorithm first, ingrained into the AI in such a way that it's almost, you're instilling the goodness in the child in its infancy, and that it'll stick with it, you have to then trust it afterwards that the goodness will stay within it. But in order for that to happen, you have to know that the AI is actually being, under the control of, people with empathy and love, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, our world leaders are not in that position at the moment. So that's where my big fear comes into it. Yes, we could all go outside and try to do our own opposition AI, but that again comes to conflict at the end of the day. I think where the world is also on the cusp, humanity is on the cusp at the moment of learning a very valuable lesson in the next year to couple of years, with what's going on globally, with what our world leaders are doing in the face of sheer absurdity and madness, at the expense of something that can be put down to an economy or a commodity is more valuable and more important than human life. And that's where we are at the moment. And until, I think, what's unraveling in around the world at the moment, between Europe and between the Middle East, what's unraveling at the moment is going to unravel very quickly. And I think that it is then we're going to realize where we are, what is true in value, and what we really should be as a human species. So I think we're on the cusp of really learning that it's time to put away those guns, not pay more money for them, is to put them away, dispose of them, you know what I mean? And come together as the one human family. So we're on the cusp of that, I believe, and only until we get to that stage, I think, can we really then trust ourselves to instill the goodness in the AI and then trust it to go off in its own adolescence, but it'll do it in a sense that it'll work with us, not against us. That's the way I see where we are on the passing the better.
Beautiful, James. Thank you. All right, Jack is next in the queue. And as I mentioned, I'm going to request some patience from you, Jack, and from everyone as I invite us all to an exercise in actually developing collective human superintelligence. And what I'd like to propose is a very simple exercise. Thank you, Jack. I've mentioned the example of Paul Beckwith and creating an after party, or ideally a series of after parties for Paul Beckwith and his beautiful videos. I'd like for everyone for the next few minutes, let's say 10 minutes or so, and then I have to go at the top of the hour myself, but let the party continue with the afterglow. I'd like to request that everyone think of, everyone who's willing to think of at least one, either podcaster, YouTuber, Facebook Liver, I'll just say publisher of content. Think of at least one publisher of content for which you would like to see an after party developed. And what I'd like to come up with is distill this down to a short list of publishers who we can then systematically reach out to and invite to host their after party for them. There's a lot of logic to a third party such as ourselves, a third party actually hosting and managing after parties for other publishers. Thus creating a nucleus of after parties and the beginning of, frankly, CHISY, the beginning of modern CHISY, collective human superintelligence. So with that, I'll invite everyone to be silent, unless you have a question, of course, about the exercise, but please think of at least one publisher who you'd love to see an after party for. And then I invite you all to type your answer or answers, feel free to include more than one, in the chat. And then after, say, I don't know, 5 or so minutes, why don't we give ourselves 5 minutes of silence and just typing into the chat folks for whom you would like to see after parties, and feel free to ask questions if you have. And I'll mute my microphone and I'll invite everyone to mute their microphones for this next 5 minutes exercise. Go ahead. Thank you.
So Jamin, are you thinking mostly like of podcasts and things like that? Or are you including groups that give semi-regular events kind of folks? That's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a different thing.
Yeah, no. Whole groups, absolutely welcome. In fact, the way that Marco, Christopher, and others discovered us here was we threw an after party for the Harmonic Convergence, which was a whole giant group community coming together. So it doesn't have to be one person. It can be a whole group or community, and it doesn't have to be weekly. It can be quarterly, any frequency, even totally one-off. Totally welcome.
Thank you.
All right, a couple more minutes. All right. Well, as I mentioned, I need to go at the top of the hour, but this meeting will be immediately followed by the afterglow. Really good stuff that folks are putting into the chat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And let's dedicate some time every Friday to moving forward the after party concept and implementation. Because, I mean, just for example, with Paul Beckwith, who we've reached out to, we're waiting for his reply. We're friends with him. We've collaborated with him in the past. Part of the reason I mention him is it is one of those just insanely urgent topics, global warming, and how do we stop it? How do we reverse it? And I actually believe that once we start the Paul Beckwith after party, that it will grow somewhat exponentially and become the biggest climate conference ever, because people will realize that they're no longer bounded by time and space and when the next American Geophysical Union conference will happen or the next COP conference, et cetera, et cetera. But rather it's something that's happening now and it's ongoing. I think once the Paul Beckwith after party starts, I don't think it will ever end. I don't think it will ever. And no, I'm serious, until we've actually cooled the planet to the degree we need to and maintain a stasis, a livable, heat load on the planet that we can survive and stop this insane sixth mass extinction. and that's closely tied to saving and healing the biosphere, which of course is closely tied with veganism. In fact, a few years ago, we started a thing which is a mashup between cooling the planet and going vegan called Vegan Reflection, since reflectivity, solar radiation management is the main way to cool the planet in time. Of course, veganism also plays a key role. So anyway, with that, let me go ahead and stop this recording and I'll immediately start the Afterglow recording, unless there are any significant objections to recording the Afterglow. If so, please voice them now. Otherwise, I'll hit record, leave the room, and get on with what I need to get on with here and check back from time to time. And I know some of you need to go. And so I want to thank you all for being here. And again, thank you all for your amazing contributions. Mi casa su casa, or our casa su casa, nuestra casa su casa. Please feel free to stay as long as you like in the Afterglow. Feel free to come and go as you please. Marco, you doing good, Marco? Okay, good. All right. And if there are no objections to recording, if there are, just blurt them out now. If there are no objections to recording, I'll stop this recording and then start the Afterglow recording.